We will start, as it happens, when we'll go east, north, south, west, because that's how the standings are listed. As it happens, we'll start with the Dallas Cowboys. What we know about the Cowboys is they're going to have a really good defense. It's impossible for that team with Micah Parsons, with Dan Quinn, with the other personnel on that defense to not have a really good defense. What you hope is with Mike McCarthy, and this is a big risk here, taking control of the offense from Kellen Moore being gone, that Dak Prescott gets back to who he'd been his entire career prior to last year, cut down on the interceptions, take care of the football. Tony Pollard, who was the best running back on the team the last couple years, is now we know he's going to be the featured back, that he can carry the workload, and that defense plus a lack of turnovers on offense leads to the Cowboys, for the first time since the mid-90s, going on an actual postseason run. What you fear is that the offense takes a step backwards, not because Dak's turnovers jump, but because McCarthy's too conservative. And what you really fear is that Mike McCarthy, who has always dealt with game management and clock management issues, that now he has even more on his plate on game day since he's calling plays, that the Cowboys have some end-of-game, end-of-half meltdowns that cost them games they otherwise shouldn't. That's the Cowboys. The Giants, what we know that Brian Daboll's a good coach. We know that. What you hope is that Daniel Jones can keep his turnovers low like last year while expanding what he's allowed to do through the air, throwing the football. What you fear is that when they put more on Daniel Jones's plate, the turnovers will jump back up. The touchdowns might go up. I mean, they had 15 touchdowns last year. Might go up as well, but this is a team that cannot deal with turning the ball over the way they're trying to win. And so you know they have a good coach and that they're on the right track. You hope Jones, if they take the training wheels off of him, that he can continue on this trajectory. You fear that when they take the training wheels off of him, he's going to become Danny Drops again, one of the most turnover-prone quarterbacks in the league, and they can't sustain that. Philadelphia Eagles, what we know, it's almost an impossibility for this team not to be at least good. They have too good of a roster, too good of an offensive line, too good of a defensive line, too good of a leader at quarterback. So we know that their bare minimum is 10 wins probably. What you hope is that because of the leadership of Jalen Hurts, that team does not suffer a Super Bowl hangover, that they got an absolute steal at number 10 in the draft in Jalen Carter, that his Georgia teammate Jordan Davis looks like the player he was in college, more so the player he was as a rookie, where he wasn't quite as impactful as people thought, that they got another steal in Nolan Smith, and that Jalen can continue on the trajectory he was on in the Super Bowl, which was his best game throwing the football of his career. What you fear is that Sirianni, who is not as level-headed, in my opinion, as Jalen Hurts, and has not faced real adversity as a head coach in this league, that Sirianni doesn't deal well if they get off to a tough start, that Jalen does not take the next jump at throwing the football, and that all of a sudden they're in a dogfight in the NFC East when they were cruising all last year, and that this team feels like, oh man, our opportunity was last season, and now all of a sudden because they've put a lot on the credit card in Philadelphia. And now all of a sudden we're not going to have as stacked of a roster moving forward. That's what you fear, and you fear that the draft strategy of just take Georgia players might not be the best one. Washington. What you know about Washington is they should have a good defense. What you hope with Washington is that Eric Bieniemy can get the absolute most out of Sam Howell and what are some underrated weapons. What you fear is that they have clearly the worst quarterback in that, right now, clearly the worst quarterback in that division. In my opinion, not a very good head coach, that the season is already off to a weird start with Ron Rivera airing out Bieniemy unnecessarily, and that Washington is all of a sudden in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes when they're trying to be in the wild card sweepstakes. All right, that's the NFC East. NFC North, Chicago Bears. What you know is they have more talent than last year. They added DJ Moore. They addressed the offensive line. They spent some money. Last year, they spent the year in jail. They got the number one pick because of it. They were able to flip that for a lot of draft capital. What you know is that they will have more talent on the field this year than last year. What you hope is that Justin Fields can become just league average as a passer. His ability as a runner and his athleticism, if he is just a league average passer, he'll be a top 10 quarterback because he's one of the two best running quarterbacks in football. What you fear is that he is not going to evolve as a passer, that going with a defensive-minded head coach when you're trying to develop a quarterback is not going to work out, and they are going to say, oh man, we could have drafted our quarterback at number 1. We traded out of that pick. So you fear that, and you, in addition to that, kind of fear that Carolina's better than people expected, and those picks you have coming back from them aren't as good. The Detroit Lions, what you know that they have playmakers on offense. They've spent a lot of resources on trying to improve that defense, and you know those players will play hard for Dan Campbell. What you hope is that the offensive line holds up the way it did last year, so Jared Goff, because with a clean pocket, Jared Goff can play. You hope the offensive line holds up, and you hope that even though you took what are considered non-premium positions high in the draft, that those guys are instantly day one starters and you get more out of your rookies than most teams that took guys maybe at premium positions but weren't the best or the second best player at their positions in the draft. What you fear is that you're the damn Lions. And every year of your life as a Lions fan that you've gone into with any type of hope, they have found a way to kick you in the gut. And that Goff, the offensive line, is not quite as good, which means Goff doesn't have a clean pocket, which means Goff goes back to who he was at the end of his time with the Rams, that the defense doesn't get it together, that drafting a running back and an inside backer with your first-round picks was as bad as all the analytics folks said it was, and that a year where you have legitimate playoff expectations, you fall flat. Hey, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button to get more from the show, and make sure to click the bell to get notified every time new content drops. Check out full episodes of What's Right wherever you get your podcasts, or just click the link in the description below.